out of my house. I don't need a sick daughter." That sentence came from my dad as he shoved me toward the front door in the middle of a storm. 3 hours later, when the police called him, he was the one turning pale. As always, before we dive into a story with an ending that's going to feel so satisfying, let's do a quick roll call. Type present and tell me which city you're watching this story from in the comments. For everyone who's already liked and subscribed, I pray that God makes your problems easier, widens your income, and keeps you healthy. Thank you, my friends. Now listen carefully to my story. I was 15 when my dad threw me out in a storm like I was trash. Now I'm in my 20s, a lot safer, but that night still sits in my chest like something heavy. Sometimes it pops up out of nowhere when it's raining, and I have to remind myself, you're not that scared kid on the sidewalk anymore. You survived it. You beat them. Back then, it was just me, my dad Robert, and my older sister Lily in this small old house my grandmother had left behind. Everyone in the family talked about how lucky we were to have a house already paid off. They didn't know what it was like inside. To outsiders, my dad was this hard-working single father. He'd joke with neighbors, help carry their groceries, wave at people walking dogs. He'd pat Lily's shoulder and say, "This girl is my pride," and they'd all smile like we were some warm little family from a commercial. They didn't see the way he looked at me when we were alone, like I was a mistake that refused to disappear. I had asthma and used to get sick a lot, so in his words, I was the weak one. If I needed to miss school or go to the doctor, he'd twist it into money talk. "You cost me more than you're worth, Grace," he'd say while searching in the drawer where he kept all the documents. "Your grandma's money should help the family, not your drama." Lily was different with him. She was healthy, pretty, got good grades, always said the right thing. She knew how to make him laugh. She also knew how to play him like a violin. She'd complain about me in this soft, tired voice. "Dad, I tried to help Grace with her homework, but she snapped at me again." Or, "Dad, she said she wishes you weren't our father. I don't know what to do with her anymore." Half the time, those conversations never happened. Sometimes we'd just have a normal, stupid argument about clothes or phone chargers, and she'd twist it into something darker in front of him later. At first, I thought she was just being dramatic. I told myself, she's a teenager too, she's just moody. But little by little, my dad started treating me like I was dangerous, like some walking problem he had to manage. The lie that finally got me kicked out came on a Saturday night. It was one of those storms where the rain hits the window hard and the power flickers, the kind of night you definitely don't send a 15-year-old outside. I was in my room wearing these old sweatpants, scrolling on my phone and trying to pretend I didn't hear my dad and Lily arguing downstairs. Money again. It was always money. "We have to keep things calm until the hearing," my dad hissed. "If social services start sniffing around, that house goes straight to Claire." My heart jumped when I heard my Aunt Claire's name. Aunt Claire was my mom's sister, and my dad hated her. I didn't know why. I just knew he refused to let us see her after my mom passed away. I leaned closer to my door, listening. Lily sounded annoyed. "I know, Dad, but she's always whining. What do you want me to do? She's weird." "Just remember, as long as everyone thinks she's unstable, nobody's going to believe a word she says. That house stays under my control until she's 18. That's the deal. Your grandma trusted me as guardian. You want college money? Then stop acting soft." My chest went tight. I hadn't known any of that. I knew the house was from my grandma, but I didn't know there was some kind of condition tied to me and my age. I must have stepped too close to the door because one of the floorboards squeaked. Everything went quiet downstairs. Then I heard my dad's footsteps coming up. When he opened my door, he had that fake calm face he used around outsiders, the one that always made me feel more nervous than when he was openly angry. "Eavesdropping?" he asked. I was just going to the bathroom," I said, even though we both knew I was lying. He stared at me like he was calculating something. Then he smiled a little, and it didn't reach his eyes. You know, Lily's been telling me you've been acting strange, talking to yourself, saying you're hearing things. I'm not, I said right away. I'm fine. That's what you think, but we both know you're the sick one in his family. He left and closed the door, and I sat on my bed, shaking, not even sure why. I didn't know that in less than an hour he'd make sure everyone believed his version and not mine. About 30 minutes later, I heard Lily scream from downstairs. It wasn't a normal scream. It was this high, panicked cry like something horrible had just happened. I froze for a second, then ran down. She was sitting on the floor by the bottom of the stairs, clutching her arm and crying. Dad was standing over her, looking furious, but not at her, at me. There she is, your sister. Lily sniffled, looking up at me with big wet eyes. Why did you push me, Grace? She sobbed. I told you I was sorry about what I said earlier. My brain scrambled. I didn't push you, I said, my voice turned shaking. I was in my room. I didn't even come downstairs. Dad grabbed my arm so hard it hurt. That's it, he said. I'm done. Get out of my house. I don't need a sick daughter. I thought he was bluffing. Parents say stupid things when they're mad, right? I thought he'd calm down after a minute, but he dragged me to the front door. He opened it and the wind and rain hit us like a wall. He pushed my backpack and my old coat into my arms. Dad, it's raining. I'm already soaked. Where am I supposed to go? You want to act like an adult, figure it out like an adult. You're the one who doesn't want this family, so go. Please, I whispered. I didn't push her. Lily, tell him. Lily stood at the bottom of the stairs, hugging herself. She looked away. In that moment, something cracked inside me. It wasn't just my dad. It was her, my sister, the one person who knew exactly what kind of man he was. He shoved me over the threshold and slammed the door in my face. The sound of it closing was louder than the thunder. I stood there for a few seconds, rain running down my face, not knowing what to do. Then I started walking. I didn't have a plan. No money, no phone. The Wi-Fi was only in the house, and my data had run out weeks before. I just walked, shivering, breathing shallow because the cold was messing with my asthma. I passed the Jenkins house, the old couple who lived 3 houses down. I saw a curtain move like someone was watching. I thought about going up and knocking, but my brain kept telling me, don't make it worse. If you make a scene, Dad will hate you more. So I kept going. Those 3 hours felt like days. The rain never stopped. My shoes filled with water. At one point, I sat under a bus stop shelter, hugging my backpack, teeth chattering so hard my jaw hurt. There was this weird moment where my vision blurred and every breath felt like it had a weight on it. I remember thinking, if I fall asleep here, I might not wake up. The next thing I remember clearly is a flashlight in my face and someone saying my name. Grace, sweetheart, can you hear me? It was Mrs. Jenkins and a police officer. She had a big umbrella over both of them, and I could see she was soaked too. I saw your father push you out earlier, she said, her voice shaking with anger. I thought you went to a friend's house, but when I saw you still out here on the camera, I called the police. I tried to answer, but I was too cold. My chest hurt. I couldn't get enough air in. The officer called for an ambulance. They wrapped me in a blanket, lifted me carefully, and everything after that turned into bits and pieces. Bright hospital ceilings, the oxygen mask smell, a nurse saying, her vitals are low, but she's stabilizing. At some point in the middle of all that, I heard the officer on the phone. Yes, Mr. Carter, your daughter has been found. She's at County Hospital. We'll need to talk to you about what happened tonight. I didn't see my dad's face when he got that call, but I heard later he went completely white. The good father act doesn't mix well with threw my sick kid out in a storm and left her there for hours. That night was the first time things started turning against him, but it definitely wasn't the end. When I woke up properly, it was morning. The storm was gone. I was in a hospital bed, oxygen tubes in my nose, an IV in my arm. There was a woman sitting in a chair beside my bed looking over some files. She had this calm, serious face and glasses sliding down her nose. Hey, she said when she saw me looking at her,
I'm Miss Parker. I'm a social worker. How are you feeling? My chest hurts. Where's my dad? She studied me for a second. He's in a room down the hall with the police. We'll talk about him in a minute. Right now, I want to hear what happened from you. Take your time. I told her everything. The argument I overheard, the way he called me sick, Lily's fake fall, being pushed out in the storm. My voice was shaking the whole time, and I kept pausing because part of me was still scared. Scared he'd burst into the room and say I was lying. Miss Parker listened without interrupting. When I finished, she nodded slowly. In your medical file, she said quietly, there's a pattern of frequent ER visits, mostly for asthma attacks, some bruises, some falls. Do you remember those? Yeah, I'm clumsy, I guess. In some of those notes, the nurses wrote they were concerned about the way your father spoke to you. One of them asked if you felt safe at home. Do you remember that? I looked away. I did remember. I told that nurse I was fine because my dad was standing right outside the curtain. I didn't want to cause trouble, I said. Miss Parker took a breath. Grace, trouble was already there. You were just trying to survive it. She asked if there was any other family. I mentioned my mom's sister, Aunt Claire, and how we hadn't seen her in years. Do you know why? Asked she. All I know is Dad said she wanted to take us away. He said she was after Grandma's house and didn't care about us. He said he tried to make him look like a bad father. Miss Parker leaned back, giving me this look like puzzle pieces were locking into place. That house, she said slowly. Do you know who it's really in the name of? Dad, I said automatically. He reminds us all the time. My house, my rules. She picked up one of the files on her lap and tapped it lightly. Funny, she said, because according to this copy of your grandmother's will that your Aunt Claire faxed to us early this morning, the house is actually in your name, Grace. Your dad is just the guardian until you turn 18, and if he's found to be neglectful or abusive, guardianship transfers to another relative. My brain went blank for a second. What? I whispered. In my name? Yes, she said. Aunt Claire has been fighting to get a welfare check on you for a while. She wasn't allowed to see you, remember? Your dad blocked her. But last night, when the police brought you in, one of the nurses recognized your last name and called her. She drove all night. She's here. I couldn't even process that. My dad told everyone she was trouble. He said she wanted a house for herself. Now it turned out the house was tied to me, and if anyone was scared of losing access to it, it was him. That's when I really understood why he kept calling me sick. If everyone believed I was unstable, then anything I said about him throwing me out, hurting me, controlling the money would look like some fantasy in my head. Miss Parker glanced at the door. Before we bring your father in here, she said gently, I want to ask you something. If you could choose, where would you feel safer living? With him or with your aunt? My answer came out before I could even think. With my aunt. She nodded like she'd expected that. All right, then we're going to need the truth from you. Every time. No protecting him, no minimizing. Can you do that? My hands were still shaking, but I nodded. A few minutes later, they let my dad into the room. He looked small. Not physically. He was still broad-shouldered, still wearing his work jacket. But his eyes were different. Instead of that cold confidence, there was panic. Grace, he said, walking up to the bed, thank God you're okay. I've been so worried. I've been up all night. Lily was behind him, chewing her lip, eyes down. In my head, I was thinking, worried? You locked the door on me in a storm. But he had already switched into victim mode. He turned to Miss Parker. Officer told me she ran off after a fight, he said, voice shaking slightly. I was going to call around her friends' houses when the police called. I'm a single father. I'm doing my best. She's been struggling mentally. Mr. Carter, Miss Parker cut in, we've seen the neighbor's doorbell footage.
He froze. Her voice stayed calm, but there was steel underneath. In the video, you say, get out of my house, I don't need a sick daughter, and then you push her out in the rain and lock the door, she continued. She was found 3 hours later, soaked and having an asthma attack. Do you still want to say she ran off? For a second, nobody breathed. Lily's head snapped up, eyes wide. My dad opened his mouth, then closed it again.
That video is out of context, he finally said. She was out of control. You know how teenagers are. She wanted to leave. I was trying to scare her into staying. That's not what it looks like, Miss Parker replied. He turned to me then, and his eyes narrowed. Grace, he said softly, you know I love you. Tell them you overreacted. Tell them you got confused. You've always had trouble remembering things right. Gaslighting again. He said it like it was a fact. For years I would have nodded just to make him stop. But I remembered Miss Parker's words, no protecting him, no minimizing. I remember fine, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. You called me sick, you threw me out, you locked the door. Something in his face shifted, like he couldn't believe I'd said that out loud with other adults in the room. You're sick, Grace, he snapped, dropping the soft tone. You don't know what you're saying. Tell them you're confused or you're going to make everything worse for this family. That's enough, Mr. Carter, Miss Parker said firmly. Any further contact with your daughter will be supervised. We'll see you at the custody hearing. The weeks after that were a blur. I was discharged and placed with Aunt Claire temporarily. Walking into her house for the first time, I felt this weird mix of relief and fear. Relief because it smelled like my mom's old perfume and cookies and safety. Fear because I knew my dad wasn't going to let go of control easily. Claire wasn't what my dad described at all. He always called her dramatic and unstable. But she was calm, organized, and angry in this quiet, focused way. She showed me the paperwork, Grandma's will, the clause about the house, the line that said if my guardian was found unfit, she'd take over. He never told us any of this, I said, staring at the paper. Of course he didn't. He was milking your grandmother's house for all it was worth. He's been living rent-free on property that legally belongs to you. And based on what the social worker told me, he's been collecting extra benefits, claiming he's caring for a sick child. I felt sick. So he needed me to be sick. He needed people to think I was broken. Exactly, Claire said. That way, if you ever spoke up, he could say, she's not right in the head. Classic tactic. We sat at her kitchen table, and she pulled out a notebook. Listen, we're not just going to show up in court and tell a sad story. Your father is manipulative. He's going to act like the victim. So we're going to build a proper case. Evidence, witnesses. We're going to set a trap and let him walk into it. That word trap made me nervous, but also strong. Miss Parker joined us a few times explaining the process. There would be a custody hearing. There would be a judge. My dad would have a lawyer. He'd absolutely try to paint me as unstable. He'll talk about your asthma, your ER visits, your absences from school. He'll probably bring up any bad grades, any fights, any teenage stuff. We need facts to push back with. So we started gathering them. The neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins, agreed to testify and hand over the full doorbell footage, unedited. She also had notes of times she'd heard my dad shouting, times she'd seen me sitting outside on the steps late at night. Claire contacted the hospital to get copies of my records. Some of the nurses wrote statements about how my dad talked to me, how he refused certain follow-ups, how he joked about me being more trouble than I'm worth. We got school reports, too. Instead of showing me as some terror, they showed a quiet kid, sometimes withdrawn, often tired, but never violent. My teachers wrote comments like, Grace is bright but seems distracted and anxious. Doesn't match his dangerous kid story, Claire said, highlighting those lines. Then there was Lily. She didn't contact me once. The only thing I got from her was a short text after the hospital. I'm sorry, Dad said I had to. Please don't ruin everything. I stared at that text for a long time. It felt like someone pressing a bruise. When Claire saw it, she frowned. Save that, she said. It might matter later. The idea for the recording came from Miss Parker. Your sister is young and under his control, but guilt leaks out. If she reaches out again, Talk to her, not to reconcile, but to get to the truth. If she admits anything, record it. In this state, it's legal for you to record a conversation you're a part of. I didn't like the idea of secretly recording my own sister. But then I remembered her holding her arm, lying while my dad threw me into a storm. So when she finally agreed to meet me at the hospital one afternoon before I left, I was ready. I put my phone in my pocket, mic facing up, and hit record. She walked in, eyes red, looking smaller than I remembered. "You look better," she said softly. "I'm not better. I'm just not freezing to death on a bus stop anymore." She flinched. For a while, we danced around the subject, school, our aunt's house. Finally, I couldn't take it. "Why did you lie?" I asked, "about me pushing you?" She stared at the floor. "Dad said it was the only way," she whispered. "He said if we didn't convince them you were unstable, Aunt Claire would take the house and we'd be on the street. He said you're sick, Grace, that you don't see reality the same way." "And you believed him?" I asked. I don't know." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I was scared. He said if I didn't help, he'd send me to live with Mom's crazy aunt and keep me with him. I thought—" "You thought saving the house was more important than me nearly freezing outside?" I cut in. She didn't answer. She just cried harder. I wanted to comfort her. She was still my sister, but I could feel this line dividing us now, the side that chose to lie and the side that ended up on the street. When she left, I stopped the recording and sent a copy to Claire and Miss Parker. "This is good," Claire said. "It shows your father coached her. It shows motive." The night before the hearing, I barely slept. I kept imagining my dad staring at me across the courtroom, twisting everything I said, making me feel crazy again. Claire sat on the edge of my bed.
"He's going to act like he's winning at the start," she said. "That's what people like him do. They charm, they lie, they cry at the right moments. But we have truth on our side, and we're not going in there empty-handed." She squeezed my hand. "Remember," she added, "this isn't just about the house. It's about your life, your safety, your future." The courthouse smelled like old paper and coffee. We sat on one side of the room, me, Claire, Miss Parker, and a lawyer Claire had found, Mr. Lewis. On the other side, my dad in a suit I'd never seen before, and a slick-looking lawyer who kept whispering in his ear. Lily sat behind them, looking pale. I tried not to shake. The judge, a woman named Judge Harris, came in, and everyone stood up. After the formal opening, my dad's lawyer got to talk first. He was good, I'll give him that. He painted this picture of a father doing his best after his wife's death. He talked about my asthma, my episodes, how I misremembered events. He said I'd always been emotionally fragile, and my dad was scared and didn't handle that storm night well. He even showed copies of my lowest test scores, brought up times I missed school, hinted that I might be using attention-seeking behavior. My dad even wiped away a tear at one point. I almost laughed, but not in a funny way, more like, wow, you really practiced this. When it was our turn, the tone changed. Mr. Lewis started simple. "Grace," he said, "can you tell the court in your own words what happened that night?" I told them, again, this time into a microphone with my dad right there staring at me. He glared at me like he wanted to crush me with his eyes. My hands shook on the table, but I kept talking. After I finished, his lawyer stood. "Grace," he said smoothly, "you've been described as having some difficulties with anxiety and perception. Is it possible that in your emotional state that night you misunderstood your father's words or actions?" "I know what happened," I said. "He pushed me out of the house and locked the door." "And you have no proof of that besides your memory?" he asked. Mr. Lewis smiled slightly. "Actually," he said, turning to the judge, "we do." He asked permission to play some video. The judge agreed. The lights dimmed a little, and on the screen at the front of the courtroom, Mrs. Jenkins' doorbell footage started. There we were, my dad at the doorway, shoving my backpack into my arms, me in my thin coat, rain blowing sideways, his voice loud and clear.
"Get out of my house. I don't need a sick daughter." On the screen, you could see him push me out. You could see me stumble. You could see the door slam. The whole room went very quiet. My dad's lawyer cleared his throat. "This video could be interpreted. It can be interpreted exactly as it is," Judge Harris said, eyebrows raised. "Mr. Carter, do you deny this is you?" My dad shifted in his seat. "That's me, yes, but that clip doesn't show the whole story. She'd been threatening to leave for months. She was violent that night. I lost my temper, but I didn't mean for her to actually go. I thought she'd come back." Mrs. Jenkins was called up next. She testified about what she saw that night and also about other times she heard shouting. Still, my dad's lawyer tried to spin it. "He's a single parent under stress," he repeated. "A moment of poor judgment, not a pattern." That's when Mr. Lewis nodded to me. Time for the second layer of the trap. "We'd like to submit an audio recording, Your Honor, a conversation between Grace and Lily at the hospital the day after the incident." My dad stiffened. The recording played. Lily's voice filled the room, shaky and small. "Dad said it was the only way. He said if we didn't convince them you were unstable, Aunt Claire would take the house and we'd be out on the street." You could see Lily shrinking in her seat as her own words echoed back at her. He said, you're sick, Grace, that you don't see reality the same way." Silence again. My dad's lawyer jumped up. "This is illegal," he said. "She recorded a minor without—" "It's perfectly legal. One-party consent. And even if you ignore the legal side, morally it shows clear coaching and manipulation by Mr. Carter." The judge looked at Lily. "Miss Carter," she said gently, "did your father ask you to say Grace pushed you?" Lily looked at my dad. He stared back at her with this cold warning in his eyes. For a second, I thought she'd lie again. Then something cracked. "Yes," she whispered. "He told me what to say. He said if I loved our family, I'd back him up." My dad shot up from his seat. "Lily," he barked, "you don't understand." "Sit down, Mr. Carter," the judge said sharply. He sank back down, face flushing red, then turning pale. You'd think that would be enough, right? It already felt huge, but there was still the final piece, the motive. Mr. Lewis pulled out a folder. "Your Honor," he said, "we'd like to enter Grandmother Evelyn Carter's will and the deed for the house into evidence." He walked the documents up. Judge Harris flipped through them, frowning in concentration. "So," she said slowly, "the house in question is not in fact Mr. Carter's property. It's owned by Grace, held in trust, with Mr. Carter as guardian until she turns 18. And in the event that he is found unfit, guardianship passes to Aunt Claire Reynolds." She looked at my dad. "That's quite a detail to leave out, Mr. Carter." He started stammering. I didn't think it mattered for this hearing." "Yes, while collecting benefits as caregiver to a sick child. Benefits that now look very questionable, considering the way he talks about her in last night's events." Mr. Lewis wasn't done. "We also have a statement from his employer about recent garnishments of wages for debt," he said, "and bank records showing multiple late payments. Mr. Carter was under significant financial pressure. Losing guardianship of Grace would mean losing control of the house. Losing control of the house would mean losing his free place to live." The full picture was now on the table. He needed me to be sick and unreliable so nobody believed me. He needed to stay my guardian to keep the house. Throwing me out wasn't a one-time mistake. It was part of a pattern of neglect and manipulation. As if that wasn't enough, there was one more surprise witness. Emily, Lily's best friend. She'd asked Claire if she could say something. We weren't sure it would matter, but the judge allowed her. She walked up, nervous, but she spoke clearly. "I overheard Lily at school a while ago," she said. "She was laughing with some girls, saying, 'Dad says if we convince them Grace is crazy, everything stays ours.' She said her father told her you just have to cry and act scared and adults will believe you. Lily started crying silently. My dad's shoulders sagged. The judge leaned back, eyes moving from them to me, to Claire, to Miss Parker. The room felt like it was holding its breath. "Mr. Carter," she said finally, "I have seen many difficult family cases. Parents make mistakes. But what I see here is not a simple mistake. It's a pattern of manipulation, financial motive, and serious neglect of a minor's health and safety." She looked straight at me. "Grace," she said, "for your safety and well-being, I am granting full custody and guardianship to your aunt, Claire Reynolds, effective immediately. You will no longer be under your father's care. You will have the right to refuse contact. Any future contact, if you choose it, will be supervised until you are an adult." My dad's mouth opened and closed. "You can't do that," he choked out. "That house—" "That house," she interrupted, "belongs to your daughter. You will vacate it within 60 days. Failure to do so will result in enforcement actions. Additionally, given the evidence of possible benefit fraud, I am forwarding this case to the appropriate authorities for investigation." He went from red to chalk white. His hands shook. For once, he had no script ready. Lily whispered, "Dad," reaching for his arm. He pulled away from her, staring at the floor like it had betrayed him too. I didn't feel happy exactly. I felt free and exhausted. When we left the courthouse, Claire wrapped her arm around my shoulders. "You did it," she said softly. "You told the truth, and it finally mattered." Years later, I still don't talk to my dad. He tried to reach out a few times, long, dramatic messages about forgiveness and family should stay together. He never apologized properly. He never admitted what he did. It was all about how hard his life became after the court took everything. I never replied. Lily and I have a strange, fragile connection now. She's in therapy. She's apologized, really apologized, not the half-hearted stuff before. I believe she was scared and controlled, but I also know she made choices that hurt me. So we're not close, but we're not enemies either. We're just two people trying to recover from the same man in different ways. The house? We fixed it up. Claire helped me handle the legal side, and when I turned 18, it officially became mine without any strings. We rented it out, and the money helped pay for my college. And me, the sick daughter? Turns out I was never crazy. I had anxiety from living in a war zone you couldn't see from the street. Now I know how to read the signs in other people's stories. How many kids are being called dramatic or unstable just because an adult doesn't want their truth to come out? From everything that happened, I learned that the moment someone needs you to look crazy so they can stay in control, you're not the problem, they are. You can love your family and still walk away when they use you as a shield for their lies. So if you're in a situation like mine, please don't stay quiet just to keep the peace. There's real help out there, and you deserve to be safe. If you've been through something similar or want to share your own story, write it in the comments. Don't forget to share this video with your friends, hit the like button, and subscribe so you don't miss the next stories.